Welcome to that 4x4 show. My name is Bernie Williams, and in this episode, Hannes gets to drive or test drive an automatic softroader. We also drive some corrugations and we find out the latest about our disco. But first, that softroader. Most of the 4x4 tracks at Rhino Park, east of Pretoria, are quite deceptive. In fact, this track can be a bit like those surprises one hears about in places like Bangkok, where what you see is not what you get. Well, the same kind of applies here. Although these tracks may look meek and a little bit mild, they are, well, not. These very tracks played host to a few Bridgestone 4x4 events where near standard vehicles compete against each other.
This is a new Volkswagen Amarok 8-speed automatic. Driving this bakkie on this track.
Okay, so before the Toyota fans all crack open the bubbly and the Volksy fans get all uptight, let us qualify. This is the latest 8-speed automatic by TDI Amarok, so it has no low-range transfer case. Instead, it's permanently four-wheel driven with a center differential. Sure, there is a rear differential lock, and VW says the first of the gearbox's 8 ratios is in fact a crawler gear. So this Amarok is for all intents and purposes a softroader. So in theory, this good-looking bakkie should never ever come near a place like this.
For you, the viewer at home, we will test it. But before we break it, yeah, let's go for a spin.
Beauty is in the eye of the beer holder. But we reckon the Volksy bakkie is a rather dashing example of the double cab species. Big and bold, and with the customary chrome and bling in the right places, the Amarok is at the sharp end of the fashionably cool double cab brigade. This particular example has some non-standard extras fitted, like the tonneau cover, the roll bar, the tow bar, the all-terrain tires, even the mud flaps are extra cost options. There is also the curious case of the seemingly ridiculous 2-litre 4-cylinder engine.
I must admit that I thought this 2-litre move was a little bit far-fetched.
It's surprisingly non-stupid in fact. Although Volkswagen initially had some Amarok teething problems with clutches and notchy manual gearboxes, the engine has so far proved to be adequate. It combines frugal consumption for a bakkie with refinement and adequate power and torque. It's not super fast or super powerful.
So the engine on this bakkie proved to be one of its biggest assets. But what's more impressive is the ride quality on it.
This bakkie feels more like an upmarket SUV, from the space, the tactile quality, the noise insulation and the feel. You'd have to say that Volkswagen moved the comfort goalpost by a mile in the bakkie segment, but it gets even better when you hit a dirt road.
On the gravel road, the Amarok suspension feels very stable and composed.
Volkswagen spent 5 years developing the Amarok suspension, and it shows. The comfort and damping and composure on a bad dirt road are better than in some expensive SUVs. It has a raft of extra aids too, like off-road ABS, which on dirt roads allows the wheels to lock up a tiny bit more than it would on tar.
It's not all perfect in here. The Volksy lags a little bit behind its rivals with standard equipment.
Unfortunately, as is the case with all Volkswagen and Audi products, many of the modern gadgets one take for granted in rival products are only available as optional extras in here. Sure, you can have the Bluetooth communication package. That's 5,150 Rand. Sure, you can have leather. That's another 7,400 Rand, thanks. If you want a USB jack, a standard feature on both the Hilux and Ranger, that's a couple of thousand more rands. So you can have it all, but you will have to cough up and pay extra for the pleasure. Even the mud flaps will cost you an arm and a leg. Not that those mud flaps will mean anything, since Hannes will soon tackle the 4x4 track and rip them off and break the softroader Amarok into small pieces.
To compare Amaroks with Amaroks, we've brought along a real Amarok with low range.
As driving instructor and tour guide, I personally prefer a manual because I like making my own choices. But once again, boils down to personal choice. Up next, what is more cost effective? To hook your off-road caravan, head off on your holiday, or just simply book that chalet? Right, so what's your cheaper option to go on holiday? Do you go and stay in that luxury chalet, or do you buy yourself an off-road caravan and hit the road? So in order to find out how much extra it will cost you for fuel consumption pulling one of these beasts, we decided to do a little test. So we use our trusty 3-litre D4D Hilux to do our control test. We travel at a constant 120 kilometers an hour, windows up, aircon on, and our fuel consumption is 11.2 litres per 100 kilometers. Then we hook this Conqueror trailer, Conqueror Companion, and this beast weighs in at just over 1.5 tons and also almost as aerodynamic as a brick. We hit the road, aircon on, windows up, but we adjust our speed to 110 kilometers an hour. Okay, so why 110 kilometers an hour? I know I said it's safer, but let me explain to you. Behind us, we're pulling a caravan that's probably about 1.5 tons, and that's including the kitchen sink as well, because the missus wants to take that along. So now, I've got this extra weight behind me, and a normal person takes about 1.5 seconds to react from sensing danger. And if you've got all that extra weight behind you, remember that it affects your handling, number one, and it also crucially affects your stopping distances. So adjust your speed accordingly. Guess what? Fuel consumption jumps 14.8 litres per 100 kilometers. So we did all the maths, and it works out that for a family getting away for 2 holidays a year, a total of 3 weeks away, the costs are approximately even. You can view the calculations at www.that4x4.co.za. So it's all blah, 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 yada, yada, fish paste. However, there's one advantage. If I do hook this puppy, and my neighbor insists on listening to Blessed Bridges every single night, I can hitch and leave. Personally, I like to keep things simple, so I prefer my dome tent any day. Corrugations are a fact of life for the overlanding traveler, and here I will show you how to deal with them. Gravel travel in South Africa, or for that matter in Africa, you are guaranteed to come across corrugated road surfaces. You have two options, either very slow or very fast, but how about a happy medium? Here's my advice. So what do we do to get over corrugations comfortably? First of all, we need better traction, and in order to get better traction, we deflate our tires. 1.5 bar, or otherwise 75% of the manufacturer's specification. Why do we do that? The moment you deflate your tire, you extend the footprint of your tire. We also engage 4-high. So now we've engaged 4-wheel drive. We've also deflated our tires. The next thing you do is adjust your speed to around about 80 kilometers an hour. I know you're going to be tempted now because now the car is more stable and you feel more in control, but please stick to 80 kilometers an hour unless you're a very, very experienced driver on gravel roads. Do not travel faster than 80 k's an hour. From sandy tracks to rocky trails, we visit Thaba Monate Game Lodge near Bella Bella in Limpopo. Some of these trails are actually fit for goats, mountain goats to be exact. The Thaba Monate Game Lodge is located near Bella Bella in the Limpopo province, in the heart of the Waterberg Mountains. The lodge, set on 400 hectares of Limpopo's finest bushveld, offers luxury self-catering chalets, camping facilities, and a typical resort vibe in the bush. But there is a secret to this place, and that is the extreme 4x4 track. This track starts off with a steep, rocky, and slippery climb. Mom's RAV4 won't like this part. You need good ground clearance and you'd really struggle to get up here without some locking parts in your 4x4's drivetrain. Once you've scaled this climb and you relax just a little bit, Extreme Trail stops you dead in your tracks. This is a mean old grade 5 obstacle. It's rocky and it can put a big dent in both 4x4s and overinflated egos. Here, you need to spend some time planning and building a road around and through the big boulders. A spotter or someone who directs you from outside the vehicle also helps a great deal. Once you are up though, and you are up without leaving parts of your expensive ride behind, then it's all worth the effort. From here, the trail continues to wind over rocky patches. But, truth be told, after that fiver, these hardly seem like obstacles in comparison. Track leads past beautiful Waterberg vistas too, and eventually you arrive back at the lodge area. If the extreme track is too extreme for you, Thaba Monate also features a far less challenging but still beautiful 4x4 drive around the reserve. You don't have to be a guest at the lodge to tackle the 4x4 tracks, but best make prior arrangements first. For links to information about the Thaba Monate Game Lodge and all our other featured trails, visit our website.
Those loose rocks sure look like fun, man, but that's like if you're into road building. Up next, our second project car. The old Land Rover Discovery was, surprise, surprise, not sounding good. So we hauled it off to a specialist to try and find out what could be done for the poor old chap.
So it's got the moves like Jagger. It drinks 100 liters of petrol every 100 kilometers. It's got more dents and scrapes than a 20-year-old minibus taxi. Yep, it's the 1996 Land Rover Discovery 1 V8, which needs a bit more than just tender loving care. We therefore introduce you to Danny Green from Green Oval, who specializes in Land Rover products. Unlike 99% of other shops, Brakpan-based Green Oval is a one-man operation. As in really a one-man operation. Danny answers the phone, works on the landies all by himself. This way, he says, the buck stops with him. But let's get to the Discovery and its health issues. Over to Danny to explain.
Okay, so pretty much the pads were worn and the previous owner just replaced the pads. So the discs are a bit damaged. The dual battery system very poorly installed. I'm going to have to attend to that as well. We took the panel rod unit out as well. That was pretty much in a bad state, but not one of the major problems. We're looking at the prop shaft, which obviously had the major damage on the unit. And here we can see the actual damage that was caused by that unit failing. You can see the vehicle it's a bit dirty, but it's clean from a structural point of view. The high-low gear selector lever came loose somewhere or another. I don't know whether you'll be able to see it, but that's the reason why there's no high-low engagement on the actual lever on the inside. It's got a few minor leaks, and that's pretty much it. And then the suspension, obviously with the kilometers on the car, I would honestly suggest that you guys do the suspension completely, maybe replace it with some polyurethane bushing, and the rest we'll tackle as we go on.
So that's a whole lot of wrong in here, and it just again shows how important regular, proper maintenance is. Next week, the Landy gets a fancy new jacket to wear, and it heads off to Pretoria for some suspension attention.
In 1998, Land Rover launched Freelander, and to be honest with you, when it was launched, I loved it about as much as I loved cabbage, and I seriously detest cabbage. But here is a Freelander that's got attitude.
The very first Land Rover Freelander was, well, a bit of a disaster. Yes, Landy sold stacks of them in Europe, but the quality and the mechanical reliability was not so good. So what to do if you really dig the Freelander, but also don't like watching all the cars stream past you when you are stuck next to the road? Here's a suggestion. This is a Freelander, but clearly that's not a Land Rover engine that's making that noise. It's in fact a Lexus V8 engine. That's right, Toyota engine in a Land Rover, which kind of seems like the perfect marriage. A reliable and powerful engine powering a cool little compact SUV. And this is Nico Maton, the man who created this little beast. He digs cars and bikes and anything else that makes beautiful mechanical noise. The Lexus V8 engine is a 4-litre and it produces 150 horsepower or 110 kilowatt. That may not sound like a lot, but like any old V8, cubic inches equal lots of torque. Coupled to a 5-speed Lexus automatic gearbox, the relatively lightweight Freelander is frightfully fast in a straight line. It's no longer a 4x4. That was technically not possible to do, so this Freelander is rear-wheel driven only. The V-Lander is not finished yet. Nico still wants to touch up on the smaller details, and he also still needs to sort out the Tiptronic function on the gearbox. Nico did all the installation work himself, and to date he has spent 20,000 Rand on the engineless car, 15,000 Rand on the engine and gearbox and electronics combo, and another 6,000 Rand or so on the wheels and tires. So that's just over 40k for a V8 powered little pop rocket.
Okay, so that Freelander has got serious attitude, but at least they've now upgraded the engine and put a proper motor in there for a change. Up next we have Hannes and the Auto Amarok. So how do you think it would fare on the Rhino Park Series Trail? He's either going to break it or he's going to die trying.
Earlier we told you that the new Amarok has rewritten the rulebook for double cabs when it comes to comfort, refinement, interior quality and a few other things too. What does matter is that this 8-speed automatic Amarok 4x4 doesn't have a low-range transfer case. So technically speaking it's a softroader, and Hannes will now commence destroying it on Rhino Park's trying 4x4 tests.
We laid out a special sand track here to see which of the two Amaroks is going to be the better suited to it. The automatic or the manual.
Off he goes then, and the 4Motion 4-wheel drive system is efficiently distributing the power between the front and rear axles as required with the traction control switched off. And it looks like he's changing the radio station. Indeed, leaving the gear swaps to the computer brain to sort out does make driving off-road just a bit easier. And thankfully, before Hannes gets out the Steve Hofmeyer CD, he flashes past the finishing line. Time for the manual Amarok then.
This is sandy, tight track. I think let's select low range. It'll just make it easier. First gear.
Now, Hannes has to work a bit harder, working the clutch, the gears and the steering wheel, while the drivetrain is locked in a 50-50 configuration. No time for Steve-O now. It's just so much easier in an auto. Next up is a big steep climb lined with ruts that cause wheels to leave the ground. It's the kind of obstacle that can make a softroader break down in tears. And first up is the manual Amarok with that all-important low-range option. Now the Amarok's low-range transfer case comes into its own, providing maximum torque in a very slow application. The rear differential lock is also engaged to help maintain forward momentum. Articulation is not great, but it's not bad either. And yes, as expected, the manual Amarok gets up the obstacle without killing Hannes or itself.
Now low range, only div lock on, select to first gear, Tiptronic. I don't know about this, but let's try.
The fancy 8-speed gearbox's first ratio is a crawler gear according to Volkswagen. It should be more than sufficient for most 4x4 tasks, reckons VW spin doctors. With the rear diff locked, which also disables the traction control, the Amarok climbs. Can you believe it? It actually makes it. And it didn't kill Hannes either.
That was surprisingly impressive.
Going up a steep obstacle is one thing, but going down is a different matter altogether. Engine braking is vital to keep the speed in check, and without the correct gear ratios, engine braking will be non-existent.
Here I have low range, lock diff, descent control and engine braking.
And indeed, with the low-range transfer case working in conjunction with the engine and the electronics, the manual Amarok speed is kept down to an absolute crawl. But oh dear, this is now probably where the two-pedal Amarok is going to get killed.
All I can do now is select first gear and hope that the electronics sort out the details.
But hang on, what is this now? The computer is also keeping the auto Amarok speed down to a crawl, braking the wheels individually, as needed.
Well, that was actually another surprise. The choice in between these two is very difficult. It all depends on your own personal preference. You know, if you drive everyday obstacles, maybe I'll definitely go for the manual. But for me, driving and towing, caravanning and quad, I'll definitely go for the automatic. It's just a lot smoother in the sand, and I'll be happy to have an automatic.
Wow, that's really impressive stuff. But me, I prefer low range. When you have to drive on the mountain trails and they're going slow. But then, of course, it also depends on the nut holding the steering. But that's it for this week, folks. We'll see you next week. And please, please, please remember, keep left, pass right.
Catch all the latest motoring news in Leisure Wheels magazine. If you want more information about that 4x4 show, find us on Facebook. There you will also find more information about that 4x4 trip in conjunction with Leisure Wheels magazine.